Wake up to the sounds of the silence that allow. Oh, hello, seekers and travelers. Oh no, I messed up the intro. Hello, travelers and seekers of tales of amusement and entertainment. I totally wasn't singing a song that was in my head to myself at all, and totally knew what I was doing. And it is I, the Lunar Skald, here to fulfill all of your curiosities with tales from RPG horror stories. For this episode, I have something a bit special for all of you, and that special something is truly a saga. I know I've mentioned sagas before, but this one is a real saga. One that I have every single part for, and I am going to read every single one of them for you. And I am going to absolutely enjoy, probably, maybe, I don't know. But anyways, this saga I'm sure will meet all of our entertainment value, and who knows what it might be that we feel. And as in for other news that I would like to mention, the reason I probably haven't been making videos in some of the recent time is that I've been busy with a bit of work stuff. And in fact, tomorrow I actually am going to be working on a bit of work things as well. But eventually it should be all over and I'll be able to have more time to spend to make videos like this. And without further ado, I'm going to make up for that lost time with this saga. One that shall be known as the MANCHILD Saga. Now, have you ever really met a man-child? And I mean, you've probably seen them, you've probably interacted with them when it comes to Twitter or 4chan or, well, let's be fucking real here, fucking real life, with all the man-children going around talking about how masculine they are, how tough and strong and boldly manly they are, while also being the absolute oh well, I don't even need to really talk about just how pathetic they are when they come up with something that ends up offending them to the very core, where they have to project so much of their snowflakeness. I mean, come on. Do I really need to talk about the kind of man who really just feels they're so masculine with their traditional values, and then the moment, let's say, oh, I don't know, a man and another man is kissing each other, and suddenly that masculinity just melts away. It's amusing, but also incredibly frustrating when you have to deal with them, and that's exactly what we're going to be seeing in this saga. And unfortunately, in D&D, sometimes you just end up attracting those kinds of people. And considering my other hobby being Warhammer 40k, oh, do I know of hobbies that apparently just attract those kinds of people, and there's nothing I can do about it. But, at the very least, we can go ahead and poke some fun at them and see just how absolutely bratty these man-children are, so that we can actually understand what a man really is like. By which I mean not complaining so much just because things don't go your way. I'm so sorry, but maybe that's something you should understand considering you brag about it so much. But without my ramblings, why don't we go ahead and actually get into the story, shall we, my dears? This first part shall be known as Guns and Not So Glory, the MANCHILD Saga, Part 1. Posted by Just Mary 3 days ago. Part 1. I'm only writing this because I have gotten permission to post this about our experience. This story is long, spanning 5 different campaigns and outside drama. Also, this article starts in 2018 or 2019, somewhere there. By the time I joined the group, there was already a Cyberpunk 2020 campaign, but I was told that our DM, MANCHILD, had asked our university's anime and gaming club if anyone wanted to join a campaign he was running. For reference, both MANCHILD and most of his players were new to the TTRPG world, but we were in school for art, our love for role-playing, so they wanted to play. Another thing to note is MANCHILD is a film student. highly opinioned and stubborn. He was a fantastic storyteller and knowledgeable about the games he ran/played. I and everyone else in this story don't hate him, but his actions have caused us to never play TTRPGs with him. Side note, despite being a TTRPG, he hated backstories. He didn't want to read the notes we had about our characters, their lives, and other info, so he would never bring it up or use them in-game. I joined Group 2 as a contracted techie. I can't remember what happened before I joined, I'm sure I'll be told later, but the group had been split into 2 different campaigns, with Manchild as the DM. Group 1 being locked up in jail, and Group 2 being on the run, having side missions. Now at this time, I had played D&D 5e for years, but I had never played Cyberpunk, so I was excited to play a different system and have an in-person game instead of having it online. Due to my lack of knowledge of the system, world, and my stupidity in not asking questions, my character had little money and no armor, and I, the player, had little to no knowledge of guns, which would be my downfall, oopsies. But I loved my badass techie Geo, and so did the rest of the players. Group 2 was doing a mission in San Francisco, and we had it sneaked into a facility. My memory is hazy and I can't remember which one. The party had to hide from the guards, and when one of my party members got caught, I thought I could shoot my rifle and not get seen. Manchild was very knowledgeable about guns, and I think he thought all of us would know about silencers or do my research, but I had no idea about them. Manchild didn't let me know I would get caught before the game/in session, resulting in Geo dying, and a fight with the guards. Every other player had a character die before I got there, and most of the party were playing new characters. While I was sad, it was the nature of Cyberpunk, right? So it was time to make a new character. Manchild had ruled that we couldn't play the same class, which I didn't understand since I hadn't played a techie for more than 3 sessions, but whatever. I'll make a nomad, live, and call it a day. I was not trying to make the same mistake again. I made sure I had armor and a silencer on my gun. However, Manchild told me I would have no money going into the session. I thought this would be fine, as I would help Group 2 with a case and get cash in the game. Nope. One of the players who was the one who was giving us the contract, which I will call Walker, held on to the money and never paid us. But I needed money for gas, parking spots, etc. So I would ask Walker for cash. Walker in-game would get upset with me every time I asked, and when I asked to be paid half up front, Walker would say, "Too late, should have asked earlier." I wouldn't be so upset if A, we didn't have to pay for literally everything to move forward with the story, and B, they wouldn't make fun of another player and I for constantly asking for money outside of the game. I get it in-game, it's a bit funny, but once it's outside of the game and making fun of the situation all the time, it felt more like they were picking on me and not my character. I would ask Manchild to at least help us out, but he just shrugged it off and told me to deal with it in-game. However, this is where the story starts, and I think this is an excellent time to talk about Group 1. While Group 2 was doing side missions and just whatever, Group 1 locked up in jail had died with the exception of one. The players had all died in one 5-hour session, including a prison fight, an attempted escape, and an explosion. The one character who lived, Mitch, had woken up in a hospital wing to learn that all of his friends had died, caused by Walker, the player from Group 2. Mitch wanted revenge and assembled a new group, the players, new characters, to hunt down Walker. Group 1 was trying their best to figure out where Group 2 was, but Manchild didn't give any hints to find us. Walker gave Group 1 directions that Manchild didn't use and only used the one meant to be the dead end. This was supposed to lead to a big fight between Group 1 and Group 2, but we couldn't do it because they couldn't find us. They had no idea that Group 2 had even gone to San Francisco, and when they did find out, we were already in LA. What made Group 1 pissed was that on the days they weren't playing their sessions, they would listen in to Group 2's sessions and vice versa. So they knew out of the game where we were, but didn't know how to get the information in-game. In desperation, they went to someone known as the Collector, which everyone knew was bad news, but with no choice, they traded memories from their techie player, Siri, for information. This would piss off the corporation that hired them to track down Walker, as Manchild explained. The Collector having Siri's memories would leave the corporation defenseless, causing the group leader, Ocampo, to be ordered to kill Siri. Siri's player, Fox, at this time, was slowly reaching their breaking point with Manchild. Siri was constantly getting their characters killed, one after another, having the highest character death amongst our group. One of the biggest reasons their characters kept getting killed was because they would play good characters, and be told good characters would die in Night City, as if they are not good people in a post-apocalyptic world. Manchild would joke that they were the president of Character Death Club, which Fox did not like. So Ocampo is left with a hard decision, killing their friend or disobeying his higher-up. I should mention that we were all at Manchild's house having a double session, so Group 2 was sitting on his couch listening while the rest of the Group 1 was in the basement, not allowed to hear this part. Ocampo hatched a plan. He took Siri's hand and burned it on a stove to remove her fingerprints, led her to the docks, and told Siri to leave because the corporation wanted her dead while handing a bag with money and blue glass. Now, blue glass was a drug that Siri was addicted to, but as Fox would explain it, she was smart enough not to have any till she was deemed safe. Siri left, and we thought that was the end of their story for now. But later that session, they discovered that Siri had run herself into a wall with a bus due to being high on blue glass. Fox was pissed as they didn't agree with their character dying that way, and wanted to discuss what happened to Siri with Manchild after Group 2's session. He kills their character by justifying that she would have been high and done it. Fox had a backup character already made, which was the usual thing with the group since we had characters die all the time. We always had another one lined up. However, Manchild told us that he had killed Fox's backup character because she was a liability, even though she had nothing to do with Siri. Still, Manchild told Fox, "That's what you get for making a backup character." This left Group 1 without a techie, which they needed to move forward with their plan, and the corporation upset them because Ocampo didn't kill Siri. What did Group 2 do in their session? Nothing. We fucked around because we couldn't do anything until Group 1 found us. By the end of the day, we were tired. Fox was upset, and we were left unsure what to do. Manchild asked what class Ocampo thought they needed for the group so that Fox could play it for their next character, and they replied with, "A techie?" But because he had that stupid rule about not playing the same class, Fox couldn't play another techie. After a few sessions of Group 1 not being able to find Group 2, Walker had a giant sign that said, "Find me in LA" on a truck. Did we have a big fight? Did we finally have that confrontation that we had been waiting for months? Nope. Group 1 upset a gang in LA and killed everyone in Group 1. We did have one moment between Walker and Mitch, but in the end, Mitch died. Everyone was done with Cyberpunk and didn't want to play anymore. There were more Group 2 sessions, but many of us were just tired of the campaign and didn't want to play anymore. I wish this was the end of it, but nope, I still got 4 more games to go through. Oh, wow, okay, already number 1. Part 1, and things have already just decided to go off the rails. Manchild clearly doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. I mean, you set up a whole confrontation between 2 rival gangs, and you decide, Why didn't I make it as difficult as possible to have this even happen in the first place? And then, while I'm at it, go ahead and screw around with Group 1 as much as I possibly can by constantly killing their characters over and over again. And absolutely make sure that they don't have the class that they need, because I'm going to make a rule of not playing the class that they had before. And even further, I'm going to go ahead and target one particular person in general because they want to play good characters. Now, I've heard of the DM normally targeting evil players or whatever class it is that they come up with. I have a feeling Manchild has a huge problem with techies. But at the same time, now we're actually seeing the problem with having a good character. I have honestly never heard that before with a DM ever, but now we actually see that there is definitely something where a DM has a problem with a good character. Why? Just why? I get it's supposed to be post-apocalyptic, but why? Obviously, when people are supposed to be working together, there's supposed to be at least some reason to have some camaraderie. I mean, evil campaigns exist, but there's supposed to be some sort of camaraderie, and suffice to say, having good characters kinda helps with that. They're able to at least have some sort of light of hope in a hopeless world. That's the whole point, or some reason why they do what they do. But the fact that this man-child has a problem with somebody who wants to be a good character, that's just wow. I mean, at least DMs have a reason to target the evil character. I'm not saying it's right, but there's at least a reason for it. But, just wow. Already, you can tell I am not a fan of Manchild. Definitely not definitely not the reasons I was saying earlier, but yeah, Manchild is definitely showing his inner Manchild by trying to prove how dominant he is. But now, let's go ahead and move on to part 2, shall we? 5th edition Audacity. Posted by Jasmari, once again, the Manchild Saga Part 2. If you read Part 1, you know about our Cyberpunk campaign, but you don't need to read Part 1 to understand Part 2. However, TLDR, Manchild punishes players for not playing the game the way he wanted to. Oh no, this is already looking so bad. I also want to mention that these events happened over 2 years ago, and we don't play TTRPGs with Manchild anymore. This was just a way to get all my feelings out of my chest and finally get all the anger out that I had felt for so long. But anyway, after Cyberpunk, I decided I would run a D&D 5e with the group. My homebrew world with Manchild as a player. Again, for reference, Manchild had never played D&D 5e. He had seen some Critical Role in a game, so did most of the other players. So I would do what every DM would teach you, how to make your character, what the world is like, and break down the campaign. I had mentioned that this would be a mainly role-playing game, as this is how I prefer to run my games. I should add that Manchild doesn't see the appeal of role-playing and tell me, "We're already friends in real life, why do you need to talk to each other in a game like we weren't?" I again mentioned to him that this is mainly a role-playing D&D game, but he agrees to play it anyways. Oh, I already see the problems here. They are just already spiking up and I'm not liking it. Even though I said it would be a one-shot, I figured it was going to be a campaign, so I asked everyone to write a little backstory. They were a little hesitant about giving me anything. What I didn't mention in part 1 is that not only did Manchild not care about people's backstories, if you had a secret in them, he would just tell everyone at the table, basically losing the fun of having a reveal later down the line. So pretty much everyone was scared to give me a backstory. Well, everyone but Manchild. He didn't want to write one, so I ended up writing his backstory for the sake of time. Manchild wanted to be a half-orc noble fighter, so I wrote him as a nobleman's love child with a half-sister and half-brother who hated him, so they sent him away. Honestly, the first session went okay. It wasn't until I got deeper into the story that it got worse. One of the biggest things that he would completely metagame by either giving/talking about information his character would know nothing about, or bossing other players around when his character wasn't there to discuss with them. Right before our first session, he would go to his local game store and play Adventurers League, which was fine. I like Adventurers League. It teaches new players how to play the game and teaches new DMs how to run a one-shot. However, because Manchild would go to Adventurers League, he would constantly compare my game to it. He would tell me that we roleplayed too much, even though I told him that ahead of time, or that I was loose with the rules. He also complained that he never had enough money even though they had a lot and it wasn't hard to give more. Funny how he would complain about that but let my character go through the same thing and would brush me off, which is a reference to part 1 if you haven't read it yet. He also got mad at my players for not knowing how to play their characters. Of course, they don't know how to play their characters. Everyone but me and Walker hadn't played D&D before this game, so jumping from Cyberpunk to D&D was a hard adjustment. But it didn't stop him from bossing people on how to play their characters, how to use their actions in a fight. He would also yell at the other players for having fun and taking some time to fool around rather than keeping track of the mission. Their fooling around lasted maybe 10, maybe 20 minutes in actual time. I have even invited my boyfriend, who had only met the group a couple of times at a small convention, but he wanted to come and guest play in one of my sessions, so he made the trip to my university. Little did he know he would be greeted with Manchild yelling at everyone to hurry up because he was excited that there was finally combat. He even yelled at another player because their current plan he had wasn't going to work, so they would have to think of a different idea. Manchild kept yelling at him about what to do and how can you not know your character sheet by now, which resulted in that player crying and leaving the table. I ended up shutting down due to the amount of yelling and screaming and feeling like shit that a couple of my players had to leave due to stress caused by Manchild. Fox went home for the summer, so we had them over Discord, but every time they would speak, Manchild would speak over them. I would try to get them involved, however it was hard when Manchild would not only sit near me, but he was a naturally loud person and easily overpowered someone. So imagine trying to speak over them when you are online and in a different city. In my years of playing D&D, I never ran into a player that I couldn't talk to if I were having an issue, but it felt like every time I would try to fix in-game when he would yell and insult NPCs that would listen to him. If he metagamed, I could call him out, etc., but nothing was working. Shadow, one of my friends, had been listening to the campaign online, tried to give me advice, and even jumped in as a guest player to help keep Manchild in his place. But he would again overpower everyone. I was completely lost and had no idea what to do next. After weeks of the same shit, over and over again, Fox and I decided that we would talk to him about it in person. I had asked him to meet with us at my work, which was always empty since I had the morning shift. Fox and I would talk about problems and he would just say that in Adventurers League it was like this, or, well, when I was playing Adventurers League. We kept telling him that my game was not Adventurers League, and that I run things differently, that everyone should have a say in the game, not just him. When the conversation went nowhere, I couldn't hold back the stress that had been there for weeks and began to cry. We eventually came to some agreement and I thought everything was good. But I was wrong. The party was in a city trying to collect members of the government to let them know that there was a cult trying to bring back ancient elemental dragons that they fought many years ago. They found out that one of the ladies was part of the cult, and instead of talking to the police or discussing it with his party, he went to her house and confronted her, which managed to get away because she was a high-level wizard with time stop. So not only did the party lose a really good lead, he yelled at the mayor of the city, claiming it was her fault, which kicked them out of the town. I was fed up at this point, and Fox and I had gone back and talked to him again and again about our issues, but he didn't listen. If you were wondering why I kept letting this happen honestly, I don't know. Maybe I was trying to please everyone, or perhaps it was because I was scared of getting yelled at again. He was also our friend, and we wanted him to be included in our games. I had even reset the whole world, changed his character alignment, and even then, nothing changed. Whenever the spotlight wasn't on him, he would try to make it all about him again. When Fox and I sat down and talked about MANCHILD, we were worried about his attitude because Fox was going to start a new campaign later on, and we didn't want to share the same mistakes, so we messaged him that we wanted to talk. He told us that he was meeting our friend at his university, and we couldn't meet him there. We told MANCHILD our issues, and he would just tell us we were wrong and didn't listen to us. This time, Fox and I were crying and started to shut down as MANCHILD began yelling over and over again. I felt so bad for our other friend for trying to help, but even he couldn't get through to him. We left the conversation drained and eventually gave in to his demands. Even convinced Fox that they should complain to the group because no one would listen to him. This would be the last time we met before the pandemic, resulting in all of us having the session online rather than in person. It was a mess. In fairness, I was completely unorganized, and there were more people than I could handle. But worst of it all, I couldn't shut out MANCHILD. Usually, I could focus on a different person when he would yell. But online, I was like hearing everyone's voices all at once turned up to 200%. I began to shut down and get angry, and I decided this would be the end of the campaign. This attitude didn't stop at my game. My friends also ran a game as co-DMs in a homebrew system, and even in this game where he didn't know the system, told them how the game should be run and got angry when it was a heavy roleplay game, even though he was told that's how it was going to be run. He would throw them out the window when he didn't like the rules. For example, in this game, they were all magic users, and they were told repeatedly that no one should know you are using black magic. What does MANCHILD do? Use black magic in front of NPCs in the wide open. The worst of it is that he would talk about how bad the game was, that I should be glad I'm not in the game because it was a mess. He would put me in the middle by coming to me to hear his shit, and I didn't know if I should tell the DMs what was going on. In the end, I told them, and after much debate, he was kicked out of the game. Not all of it ended in a shit show due to this. I made a whole new campaign with Fox, Shadow, and both DMs from the homebrew campaign, and it was going to be great. Again, I wish this was the end, but no, we still got 2 more games to talk about. Oh, for fuck's sake, I feel like clawing my fucking eyes out right now. Holy fucking shit. I apologize for the amount of swearing I am uttering, and if it bothers anyone, I apologize sincerely for it. But, oh my gods. So we are seeing, right before us, that not only is MANCHILD a shitty DM, but MANCHILD is most certainly someone who loves to hog the damn spotlight. However way he can, he will do it. MANCHILD will always want to be that stubborn piece of shit that will always act as though they're right. No matter what it is they do, no matter what they say, no matter how little they actually know about reality, they're going to pretend that this is exactly the way things are because they say so. Oh, and I know what living under people like that is like. And I am definitely surprised that somebody didn't just punch the fucking lights out of him. But then again, I'm not a very confrontational person, so I'm really not one to talk, other than the fact that I do tend to have that much anger building up inside me, so that's probably what is saying something like that right now. But the only advice I can ever give in a situation like this, and it is the mantra that should be remembered for every D&D player. No D&D is better than bad D&D. And MANCHILD, more than probably, well, I can't necessarily say more than anybody, or even most problem players, because I've seen worse, but MANCHILD is definitely high ranking when it comes to the ranks of problem players. By far. But there is plenty more we have to go through, so let's just see how much worse he'll get. So, Part 3, League of D&D Horror, the MANCHILD SAGA Part 3. Part 3. Like I said in Part 2, you don't need the other two parts to understand this one. However, it does help with context. Before we dive into the next D&D game that I stupidly joined, let's talk about Outside. Game 4. After the end of my D&D campaign, a few months passed, and the pandemic was at its peak. Everyone was stuck at home. We were trying to fill the time with anything that we could. Manchild had asked me if I wanted to join his D&D campaign. It would be set in the League of Legends world. I was very hesitant to participate since I knew nothing about League of Legends, nor did I play the game, which Manchild knew, and told me that it would be okay since Goblin, another friend of ours, was going to join, and he doesn't play the game either. So I thought it would be okay. So I made a gunslinger. Sonia from Piltover. Oh my god, am I thinking of Caitlyn right now? Or maybe somebody that could be linked to Caitlyn. I'm sorry, I can't help but think of fangasming over somebody like Caitlyn, because Caitlyn is awesome. Okay, anyways. After researching where Sonia lived, I didn't look into any of the characters or any other place because my character wouldn't know any information in-game, so I didn't think I needed to know. I would regret this later on. Before we started the session, Manchild asked me questions about my character, knowing he hated backstories. I thought I could make a simple backstory. I was used to making very detailed backstories, so I wanted to try and make a simple one where both my parents were alive and I was on good terms with them. And Sonia just wanted to explore the world. But before the session started, Manchild sent me a paragraph where Sonia had stolen blueprints of a gun from her father and ran away from home. This was not how I wanted my character to be. But it was too late to change them, so I just sucked it up and left it. Little did I know that Manchild completely changed Goblin's backstory, changing his character's personality entirely. If you didn't know anything about the League world during the session, you were left confused by everyone else's reactions when a character came in. People would be so excited, and Goblin and I were confused about who they were. He would do this for almost every session, bringing in the all-powerful characters to talk to level 1 low-life people. Everyone at the table understood that these champions would be around, but didn't know why they were speaking to some kids who didn't know any better. I had a hard time keeping up with the new NPCs that were coming in every session, and I couldn't remember who was who. I didn't understand their importance in the game because it was never properly explained. I felt like I was being punished for not being knowledgeable of the world or the game, even though I was told it would be fine. We were also meeting a world-changing decision at level 2. It felt like we were altering an entire society before we even hit level 3, and being asked advice on warpaths, being invited to balls and events with high government members. No one was part of that world and their backstory, so I couldn't understand why we were being asked this so early in the campaign. Even though I was a gunslinger, I wasn't allowed to have a gun, or so I had to find one in-game. But he made making or buying guns nearly impossible. Actually, all magic or high-power weapons were way overpriced, and it didn't matter how much the party collected. We couldn't afford anything. His sessions ran for 4 hours, and I recently started a new job that sucked. I left work super tired and just overall drained, since I had to eat dinner and head to the session quickly. I often felt sleepy as it got later in the night. I asked Manchild if we could finish 30 minutes early, rather than the whole 4 hours. He told me that because no one else was complaining, he didn't want to do it. So the rest of his campaign, once it hit 10, was completely asleep in my chair. And he said he felt bad, but didn't do anything. And I felt like it was rude to leave before the session ended. Manchild didn't know how to balance combat encounters, and he would make the enemy/enemies super powerful, and often half the party would be unconscious or at super low health. We also didn't have a dedicated healer and couldn't pick everyone up quickly. He always said that he would fix it, but he never did, and a lot of the time, the next combat would be worse. There was one session that I was unable to attend due to some family stuff. I learned that my character was getting arrested for what? Simply getting off the boat? Then we proceeded to be in Piltover for 2 weeks in-game, unable to do anything because we were waiting for a player's parents' ship to come to Piltover. Once we were on our way out, that's when my father went missing. I was utterly torn as a player. I wanted to keep playing Sonia, but Sonia, the character, wouldn't leave her mom in a time of need. Speaking of the parents' boat, Shadow and another player, Kitty, characters, were a gay couple, and this was the first time their characters were going to meet Kitty's parents. Now I should mention that Manchild is not gay, and he often didn't know how to deal with characters who were. So when we met Kitty's character's parents, they began to yell and get mad at them for not being able to have their grandchildren. This upset Shadow, as this was his last straw from not being able to do anything, always thinking he would die every combat and getting yelled at for being gay. He didn't want to play anymore. A week after Shadow left, Goblin quit the game for other reasons. My last straw was when we were in the dungeon crawl. We fought monster after monster and ended the fight with a beholder. I want to mention that we were 4 level 4 players against a beholder that was CR 13. Manchild didn't read the stats correctly, and with one wrong roll that was one off, my character was just disintegrated. Manchild gave me the option if I wanted to make a new character or keep Sonia. I was emotionally and physically drained. I wasn't getting enough sleep and I couldn't handle it. I was utterly lost in the game for not playing League, even though I was told I didn't need to. I didn't say I was leaving the campaign, but I messaged Manchild saying that I was thinking about leaving but wanted to discuss it further. If I had brought up my issues and we could fix them. I would have stayed in the game, but I never got a response. I watched him play and talk to people on a Discord call instead of at least messaging me. Even just, let me think of this, but I got nothing. So I got mad and sent him a long message that I was disappointed in him, and that I literally saw him on call and he could just talk to me so we could talk it out. He just said, there really isn't anything to talk about. You want out, and this gives you an easy out. I was so mad and upset with him that I just stopped talking to him. We later talked it out, and it was revealed that everyone in the party had a lot of issues with the campaign. I eventually decided to leave the game officially. Well, one more game, and the Saga of the Manchild will be officially done. So, based off of probably what you guessed from my little fangasm early on, I am actually a bit of a League of Legends fan. I play the games and I absolutely love their lore. Which, honestly, I'm surprised with Manchild liking League of Legends. I know you could play the game and not really know a whole lot of the lore, but at the same time, League of Legends has a lot of in-depth lore, with each and every character having their own set of flaws, their own way of showing their personality, and also even having encounters that could change the way that they are. For example, let me talk a little bit about Caitlyn. Now, you may think of her backstory either being in either from the League of Legends lore from the website or the Arcane show. But Caitlyn, in both senses, is pretty in-depth in quite a number of ways. Well, not as in-depth as a couple of other characters I will mention, but let's just start with Caitlyn since I main her a bit. Caitlyn is somebody who is born in the nobility of Piltover. But at the same time, you may probably see a little bit of something where Caitlyn also feels like she wants to do something other than be a noblewoman. She actually wants to be somebody who protects the peace of Piltover by being an enforcer, and as an enforcer, she is armed with a Hex-Tech rifle that makes her one of the most deadly snipers not just in Piltover, but also in-game in general, being labeled as sort of a range bully just because of how she has the furthest range out of any character in the game. Caitlyn is really just somebody who is an intelligent woman, and she uses her intellect not just for some political gain, but she uses it so that she can protect the people of Piltover. And later on, after the show's release, she has some lines that revolve around the unification and how she wants to make things better for both the people of Piltover and the people of Zon. However, there are other characters like Jinx, who has mental issues that revolve around the trauma that she has endured, both in the abandonment of by her sister Vi, the people that she lost, including with her parents and her friends that she accidentally killed, and then also eventually the loss of her foster father, who is also responsible for her trauma, who was Silco. Jinx is by far one of the most popular characters both in League of Legends and in Arcane because she relates to people and the way that she reveals about how dangerous trauma can be and how badly it can affect someone to where they feel that they are alone in the world. And yeah, there's just so much really to know about League of Legends, and Arcane is definitely a show you could get into that can get you into the world of League of Legends, though, again, it is based in Zon and Piltover, so that's kind of where you'll probably get most of it, but League of Legends has plenty more lore that can definitely stretch the boundaries of how people and characters can end up the way they are. Probably one of my favorites is the difference between Garen and Darius. They're pretty much the basic front-line characters, but when you read their lore, there's so much more difference to the way that they're portrayed and how they actually are. But that's just enough of me talking about League of Legends lore and my fangasming. I'm sorry if that took a while for me to get over. But yeah, other than that, I'm really surprised about how Manchild decided to pick a game like League of Legends to base his character, or his campaign off of. But yeah, Manchild really just deciding to not only make things as difficult as he possibly could for the campaign, and then, once push comes to shove, when confrontation, when he has dealt with any sort of criticism, he simply just decides, they don't want to be a part of the game, so I'm not gonna bother with it. And then, the part where he just decides to make Shadow, for being gay, deal with the thing that gay people always deal with. I get that it's something that happens. Reality is something that is important to deal with, but sometimes it's just not okay when the person in question is not okay with doing something like this without their consent. If Shadows is not okay with something like this, then Manchild should have accepted, okay, we can do something different with the family dynamic and how they respond. Because, again, we know this is how parents can respond. Why do you think this is such a huge situation whenever people come out of the closet? Why do you think that's the main thing that people who are coming out of the closet have to worry about in being able to admit that, hey, I'm not heterosexual, or hey, I'm not cis, and they have to deal with their parents ranting and raving about, oh, how you've changed so much about how we view about you just because you happen to like someone of the same gender, or you don't identify with the gender you're born with. Tough shit. It's my choice. But that's really a horrible situation to put someone in when that's something they probably don't want to deal with, especially including the fact that they probably dealt with it. But that's all I have to say, and probably the thing I was saying earlier on wasn't too far off of a hint. But now that I've gone through part 3 and all of my ramblings of a few things, including important things, let's move on to the last straw. The MANCHILD Saga, Part 4. Part 4. This is the last part, y'all. Again, you don't need to read the other 3 parts to understand what is going on in this one. Get ready to buckle in and drive into the hell that is the MANCHILD Saga. As I mentioned in Part 2, Fox was going to start a new D&D campaign, and in the summer of 2020, they were finally able to play. Fox's game was set in the world of Disney's Descendants, which, if you don't know, this is what this is. Descendants is about the children of Disney's animated movie characters that live in a world of Aradon. Villains and their children of the movies were imprisoned on an island where there were no magic and no contact with the outside world. The story starts where 4 villains' kids, VKs, are welcomed onto the mainland to learn to be good. Hopefully. The party was split where 4 players were VKs, and the other 3 were from the mainland, hero kids, HKs. The HKs were supposed to help us, the VKs, get used to this new world and get some sort of support system. I wasn't super excited to play with Manchild again after the league game, but I wasn't running the game, and I wanted to support Fox's first time running an entire campaign. They had run a few one-shots for our TTRPG club, and friends in their new hometown, but not to this extent. So I sucked it up and played my fighter rogue, Haven, daughter of Shan Yu from Mulan. Before the game started, Manchild questioned my choice in class because, would you be a fighter rogue? You would be better off doing monk or something. Or I'm sorry, why would you be a fighter rogue? You would be better off doing a monk or something. When I told him I was not changing my classes, he began to tell me which subclasses I should take so my character would be min-maxed. I yelled at him that I would not be taking any advice from him and I would make the character I wanted. I later found out that he also tried to tell Shadow what paladin subclass he should take too, despite Shadow having more D&D 5e knowledge and playtime than him. I should mention that Fox told us that this would be heavy roleplaying, and we would once in a blue moon fight. Everyone agreed, or at least we thought everyone did. Manchild started to complain about how our changeling, Chance, the child of Oogie Boogie, played by Shadow, was able to change their clothing along with their race and asked Fox how he was able to. When he kept asking why Fox was very sleep-deprived due to school and insomnia, forgot that Chance had the cloak of many fashions, so he decided that this would be the perfect time to yell at Fox about how she was giving Shadow special treatment. Despite the whole campaign premise having the HK's help, the VKs become better people. Manchild would tell us that we would never change, and once a VK, always a VK. He also believed that Fox favored the VKs over the HKs, but he was trying to control the story outside of the campaign. On several occasions, he would force Fox into meeting to try and help her with her DMing problem by telling her that she had way too many characters, which was a big issue in the game he was running. Again, they were favoring VKs over the HKs, telling them that this is how the story should be told. In these meetings, he would tell Fox that they needed to force the VKs to talk to HKs. Well, more his character. The thing was, we did. We would include him and speak to his character as he was literally one of the few people we knew at this new school. However, the more time we talked to his character, Manchild would insult our character and contest the leader of the VKs, me, of my control the group, which would make me, an already angry teenager, upset. So my character, along with some others, stopped trusting him. In one of our sessions, he headed to Olympus for some of our players, who worships a god, to participate in a tournament while the rest watched, made a betting ring on who would win. We have free reign in between each game to do whatever we wanted, and Manchild's character, the son of Tarzan, had a plan to get a golden apple. What did he want to do with this so-called apple? I have no idea, neither did Fox, our DM. When Fox would ask him what he wanted to do with the apple, he would just say, "Give it to my family." I think it's a good time to mention that Manchild had a backstory, and didn't tell Fox what it was. Once Fox learned about it, it didn't even fit with the world. It was far too gritty and edgy for the Disney-based game. He was supposed to have a better life than those trapped on the island, since he could access proper food and water and everything like the princes and princesses of the land. But he acted like he had a harder life than we did. For reference, this is also canon in the movies the campaign is based on, the VKs didn't know the taste of fresh fruit till they arrived on the mainland. They also have never seen full sunlight, as the island is forever dark and stormy. Manchild's character was the prince of the jungle with every opportunity he wanted. Anyways, Manchild tried to recruit the VKs by offering a reward if we helped him. When we asked him what it was, he just said it was a really good reward, which made my character weary and declined. He eventually got caught for many reasons. 1. We flat out snitched like the teenagers we were in-game, and 2. The gods saw him planning on taking the golden apple. By the way, Fox told him out of the game that if he could get past the 100-headed dragon and pick it out from Discord's garden, due to the nature of the powerful apple, no mortal would be able to hold it. It would just turn into dust. He didn't care. One of the tournament games was a horse race, where teams of 2 would race to the finish line. Since Fox had never run a horse race before in D&D, they asked Shadow, who enjoys making stat blocks, and made these ones for them to help them out. As Shadow's character wasn't in the race, Manchild didn't like this, and said that Fox should make their own stats for the game, and not have Shadow help them. But they already made their decisions on the matter, and that was that. The players were allowed to use magic during the horse race as long as it didn't hurt another player or an NPC. But what does Manchild do? Use magic, knocking several NPCs and players off of their horses, damaging them. Manchild's team was eliminated from the horse race, but that didn't stop him from questioning why he was. After Olympus, Chance, Shadow's character, caught the attention of a goddess and was granted the power of a paladin. When he returned to school, Chance started to use their brand new powers. Shadow misread his character sheet and attempted to use the ability to lay on hands incorrectly. Manchild called it out, and even when Fox said it was okay, he kept saying that it was wrong and decided to spend 30 minutes in actual time yelling at Shadow about how he couldn't use that ability. We all said again that it was okay, that he could do it for now. For now. But moving forward, Shadow wouldn't be able to use it that way again. Manchild just kept going on and on about how this isn't what was written in the Dungeon Master's Guide. This man loved to quote the Dungeon Master's Guide like it was the frickin' Bible. He had the books pretty much committed to memory. So every time Fox wouldn't do what was written, he had to explain and talk about it right at the moment, even when it was interrupting the flow of the game. This issue wasn't even a big deal. The use of the ability was more for flavor, rather than a game-altering decision. After that, everyone's mood about the session drops and even causes Fox, our DM, to go mute for a while. Shadow also left the call for a bit to cool off. The last thing we ever did in a game with Manchild was when we went to Wonderland. There were Wonderland flowers that, when people smelled them, caused them to become angry and attack. So we set our adventure to Wonderland, having Mercury, Child of the Mad Hatter, as our guide, to figure out what was happening while we were there. It was filled with people speaking Wonderland and confusing areas that we didn't know how to navigate. Manchild, as well as the rest of the party, mentioned in-game that he wanted to leave as soon as possible because of how confusing it is. So we quickly found out that Andre, the son of the Red Queens, having new magic powers, was unintentionally affecting the Wonderland flowers with his emotions. Later, we found out that Manchild was upset that we didn't explore anything in the Wonderland and left it like he didn't get to do anything. What I hadn't mentioned was that Andre, an NPC, was pulled from the island prison to participate in the Olympus tournaments, because one of the player characters, Arion, son of Hades, gave him powers and worships him as his god. I put worship in quotations. It was more of a father-son relationship rather than a god-worshipper relationship. When he returned to the island, his mother was pissed that he was able to not only escape her, but was able to leave the island. His life was in danger, and our party felt like we needed to save him. So my character, Haven, being the leader of the group, decides that she would talk to the Prince of the Kingdom with Arion. In the game, I mentioned I didn't want too many people in the room, so that we could quickly get this done before Andre got killed. While in-game the characters seemed to disagree a little, we all understood out-of-game that this was happening, and I thought I was good to go. So we save Andre and bring him to the mainland to practice his new power, and he watched by the party to keep him safe. I thought this would be the end of this little arc, but nope. Haven, me, and Arion's player pulls Manchild's character into a room to tell him what happened, since he didn't live with the rest of the party. Since the rest of the world believed Andre was dead, he got mad at us, saying that it was a stupid decision and that this didn't fix the problem, and we shouldn't be bringing another VK to the mainland. I told him it already happened, and he was at my house as we spoke. I asked him if he thought it was such a bad idea, then what would he have us do? He told me that we should have just gotten rid of Andre's powers and left him on the island. Arion, Andre's god, didn't want that. I didn't either, because he still would have died, with or without his powers. If he did have his powers when under control, they wouldn't affect the flowers anymore. Manchild still wanted us to take away his powers, and told us that our decision was stupid. So fed up with his actions and being petty, I began to mock him by saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Your Highness. What could I ever do without you? We gotta listen to all the powerful Manchild, right? It's not like we can make our own decisions without him." After that, we went quiet, and at the time, I knew he was thinking of leaving the campaign, but I also knew that Fox was waiting for one more wrong thing to kick him out. I should mention that Fox again and again, outside of the game, asked him to stop with his attitude and didn't like the way he handled situations, but he never listened. Before the next session, he leaves Fox this message in Discord. "It's taken me some time to not only write this, but to find the words to use. For a short answer, I won't be joining you or the Descendants crew for the next session or any other sessions afterwards. Long answer, there's no reason for me to be there, since we have no purpose in the world, and the fact that our actions mean nothing. In the Dungeon Master's Guidebook on page 71, it says that an adventure session-to-session events that we as players interact with includes a blending of exploration, social interaction, and combat. We have only ever had the social interaction part, and even that is proven worthless in our endeavors. I'll explain a little more because I understand that you and your party enjoy the roleplay aspect of the game, and that's fine, but that it is just a part of D&D. When we were told that to go to Wonderland, I was so excited because I was going to see a new place that neither my character nor I really knew well. For the first time in a while, I was excited to show up to one of your sessions and play. When we got to Wonderland, however, we were escorted around by Mercury, told everything we needed to know, and then left. To make matters worse, Alice went around and also talked to the king and queen herself, meaning that there wasn't a point in the party talking to Ben, since it didn't matter. You have it in you to be a great DM. I can see how passionate you are of this world and its characters. But there needs to be something for us players, for you as players to do. I know that this message is probably useless, as when I leave the campaign nothing will change, and the same problems will occur regardless, since the players don't want anything other than role-playing, but you as the DM need to make them use their character sheet, or what's the point in having one? Recent sessions really made me feel like no one wants me there, so leaving the campaign just makes this easier for you guys. Thank you for DMing, and good luck if you want to chat. Send me a message." Oh wow, you feel like the party and the DM don't want you there? What could have given you that idea, Manchild? Do tell, I'm very curious. That was it. Manchild never joined another session, and the game is still going strong without everyone in the group, now no longer playing with Manchild. All the issues we had about the game seem to disappear with the wild. Wonder why. In the end, as the years pass by, I have no ill intent against Manchild. I began to realize that Manchild and I just have different playstyles, where we don't see eye to eye, and being in a game where we have to react to our decisions, brings out the worst out of us. He plays, DMs, other games with different groups, and then enjoys it. Our group has learned to be very communicative about our issues before it becomes a problem. Well, I certainly think that there's way more to that. It's not that you don't see eye to eye about what it is that you enjoy. It's literally that Manchild likes to be a controlling, manipulative piece of shit about everything. I'm not entirely sure why you decided to make the last part of the story as nice as possible when throughout the entire story you talked about him like he was the absolute worst, which according to the whole thing, he was. And then you just decide to end it with, oh yeah, but everything is fine. I mean, in the end, we just see things differently, and that's all, and there's no need to be upset or anything. I'm sorry, but there were so many things to be upset about. He wanted to literally control everyone's characters at all points and times. He wants to be the center of attention at all points and times. He wants to try and make sure that he suffers absolutely no consequences, no matter how ridiculous he tries to do things. No matter how ridiculous his actions are, he wants to do them without consequence. There are so many problems with Manchild that I cannot possibly fathom the idea of trying to end things off in such a nice tone. Maybe you want to seem like the better person, but there are just some people that you don't even bother trying to act like the better person with. Because what's the point in doing that if it's not actually going to change anything? You may as well tell them right to their fucking face to fuck off and shut the hell up. That's just my opinion though, but I mean really, why? Why act as though things can just end off on a nice note? Sure, he's not around, but that doesn't mean you have to be nice about him. I mean, he literally makes things miserable. Everything he touches, he just decides to make worse. And you want to end things nice with him? Even if he were reading that last part, what do you think that's going to change? Nothing. That's what I'll tell you. It's not going to change anything because he's still going to be a manipulative piece of shit who wants to control every aspect of everything that happens that he's involved in. He's a control freak. And when someone is a control freak and doesn't want to change the fact that they are a control freak, they're just going to be a control freak. So I don't know why you bothered with that last part, and I'm sorry, but it does kind of piss me off a little bit that you decided to do that. You may as well just say, well, I don't know, but this wasn't it. You just... Honesty sometimes is... Oh, who am I kidding? Honesty is incredibly important to people like him, because he's just not going to get it any other way. You can be nice about it, but honestly, being direct and being harsh and harshly honest is the only way to do it. And if they can't handle it, well then guess what? That's their problem. So that's my thing. Just don't even bother with him. I know that sounds easy, and I know that earlier you did say he was a friend of yours, and I know how difficult it is getting rid of problem people in your life. Believe me, I know how difficult it is. But really, it does take growing a spine, and it sounded like you were growing one with all of the conversations and talks you were having with him. You were becoming more affirmative. You were becoming more confrontational about the problems that he was causing, and that was good. Don't even think about letting up on that, because once you do, unfortunately, people like him will just take advantage of that. And the problem is gone now. You can celebrate. But in all honesty, don't try to play it off as though Manchild is supposed to be some misunderstood kind of being. There is nothing to misunderstand here. Manchild is simply as he is described, a man-child that wants all of the attention, that wants everything to go his way, and absolutely no kinds of negotiations whatsoever. So that's basically how I'm gonna end this video, and whew, that was a lot to cover, and I hope that you all enjoyed this entire saga. If you would like for me to read more, let me know. And I hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to click the like button if you did. Leave a comment to tell me all about what it is that you think about this kind of thing and what you think would be appropriate, or, well, just whatever, really, because that's what the comment section is about. And subscribe if you enjoy seeing content like this, and until next time, may you sleep well in the Lunar's embrace. Bye!